And look at this, everyone. We've managed to find one of the big Nkuhuma males. Big coalition that patrol through this entire territory. And this is one of the males that I think the same male Jamie had this morning. It doesn't look as if he's moved too far from where she had him. He has moved into the shade a bit. And he's panting very heavily because it is so hot. And he's very clever. He's the only one that's got shade at the moment. We're out in the open. But I don't think this lion is going to move anytime soon. If anything, he may just try and move further into the shade. And that's exactly what he's doing. That's exactly what he's doing there. He's just moved a little bit further into the shade. But I don't think he's going to get up and move anytime soon. I mean, I could be wrong. But it looks like he'd preferably stay in the shade there. I mean, the interesting thing is there's lovely shade just behind him. If you have a look around this area, there's some lovely shade under those trees off to the left. But he's being a bit stubborn, it appears. Staying in that little area where he is. I don't think we're going to stay with this lion for too long. I'll tell you why, is because it is very warm and I don't think he's going to move. If anything, I think he'll possibly just try and move into the shade around here. Let's see if he does get up. He's changing positions a little bit, but it doesn't look like he's really interested. I mean, who knows? You never know. You never know, because these animals always do exactly what they want. There's no telling what they're going to do. But it's so great to see one of these big males. I'm thinking that our plan should probably be to carry on and see what else we can find in this area on Arathusa this afternoon. And while we are in this area, we'll possibly come back later and see what this male gets up to. Maybe get him when he decides to wake up and possibly roar. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Yeah, it's very, very warm. So I think, why don't we head out of this area and continue on and see what we can find. Maybe go and check some of the water holes or dams in this area. Because it's so hot, perhaps we're fortunate and we get some animals going down to drink. That would be great. Let's just see. Oh, hang on, there we go. Let's see if he does decide to move into shade. Or is he just changing positions? Just changing positions. That's a very, very hot lion. And there he goes. All right, I think that's what we're going to do now. We are going to move on. And Tanis, you'd like to see a European roller, and you'd ask if we can find you one. I will do my best. Let's see, and while we're driving around, we'll definitely do some birding. What a wonderful sighting of that male, though. At least we know where he is for later. Okay, I'm going to head out of this area and head towards some water holes. Let's head back to Jamie on her walk and see what she's got up to. We've just come back to this beautiful Birmingham male. He's still lying in the shade, just as we thought. It's been a very, very warm afternoon, and I think he's still very comfortable lying in the shade. I'm surprised he hasn't tried to move further into the shade. As we were discussing earlier, there's a lot of shade further in to the thicket, just off to the left. He's been bothered by some biting flies at the moment. Every now and then tries to snap at them to chase them off. Now, we've had that question about what animal we would like to bring back, what extinct animal we'd like to bring back if we could. I think mine would be, or maybe one of two. We used to have an animal in southern Africa called the quagga, which was a mixture of a zebra and almost like a donkey, a mule. And so maybe that could be interesting to see. And then I don't know how far back are we allowed to go, but a saber-toothed tiger, that would probably be pretty cool to see. Gert, what would you bring back? Have you decided?
T-Rex.
T-Rex. So Gert would bring back the T-Rex. It could be interesting. And I think we'd have a different type of safari if that was around. We'd have to go out in cages, not vehicles. I'm hoping now with the sun setting slightly, more sun is being cast onto that lion, and I'm hoping that perhaps he decides that it's getting a bit too warm for him and he decides to get up and move. But he does look pretty comfortable there at the moment. It's a bit of a breeze, so that does help this lion stay much cooler. And now, some of you might be hearing a bird in the background. It's calling frantically behind us. Let's see if we can find it for you. We can indeed. Oh, it's actually gone and sat right down at the bottom here, under the tree. And it is a starling, a Burchell's starling. There you might be able to see, there it is. And that's what's been calling that you can all hear. Beautiful Burchell's starling. They've got that beautiful iridescent sheen when the light hits them. It's just hiding in the shade at the moment, but there we go, you can see it calling. Listen, let's listen a little bit. Trying to catch little insects, probably little ants or termites around there that it's feeding on. Let's see if it calls again for us. No, it seems to be quiet now. But they are beautiful birds. I think it's definitely found some termites over there that it's feeding on. It's very peaceful at the moment. Hang on, this male seems to have lifted his head. Let's have a look. Let's see, I wonder if he heard or smelled something, or perhaps if he saw something moving through the thicket. I'm going to just scan and see. You know, we always discuss it about these animals that, especially these lions, they do rest during the day and conserve their energy for the night. They're not lazy at all. They're just very, very clever. But they are still completely aware of what's going on around them. So this big male, even though he appears to be sleeping, will still smell and hear any activity within the immediate area, and he'll be very, very aware of that. He seems to be looking around for something at the moment.
Question, Matthew. Do lions sweat through their tongues like the domestic?
So we seem to have a little radio issue there quickly. So Matthew, you wanted to know, do the lions sweat through their tongues? Matthew, I don't know about that. I know they pant very heavily. They pant very heavily to cool down. And oh, there he goes. Just lying. It rolled over. I don't know if they sweat as such through their tongue. I've never heard that before. Now the panting is just to try and cool down, breathing in cooler air perhaps. The elephant bird. Gert says the elephant bird is an animal that he'd like to bring back from extinction. You can see those flies bothering that male at the moment. Joyce, you've asked an interesting question. You want to know if I've ever seen lions laying in water. to alleviate the heat. Now, Joyce, in some parts of southern Africa, especially in Botswana, there are prides of lions that need to cross water regularly to try and hunt because of the delta, the floodplains of the delta in Botswana. There's a lot of water around, and they need to constantly move through water. That will obviously help cool them down. I've never seen a lion actually go and lay in water to cool down. I don't think they enjoy water that much, but I've never seen them go specifically to cool down. They'll only go into water if they really have to, if they need to cross it, or perhaps if they're hunting something. So it's interesting. Although, Joyce, with leopards, and leopards generally don't like water at all. However, I have seen, and I've been fortunate enough to see some very interesting leopard behavior. And I've managed to see a young male leopard actually go into a small little water hole or mud wallow. It was filled with water, and he went and he lay in there. Not sure if it was to cool down or what the reason was, but he actually went and lay in the middle of this pan. Very interesting behavior. I've never seen that again. I only saw it once. But generally they do prefer, these big cats do prefer staying out of water. And there's flies bothering that male again. Must be quite irritating. So I'm trying to clean himself and try and keep those flies off of him. Must be quite an irritation. I'm surprised. Usually if they are biting flies around, or they're in an area that the little bugs do irritate them quite a bit, you may find the lions get up and move and try to find another position. We know leopards do it, and we had it with that beautiful male leopard the other day, Tingana. He was feeding on a carcass and there were a lot of flies and bugs around, and he decided he'd had enough, and he moved further down the drainage line and found a huge jackalberry, and he climbed up and lay right in the top, or quite high up in the branches. Probably a cooler breeze up there, and maybe away from most of the flies that were bothering him. I've seen it with lions too, when they decide that enough's enough and they get up and move. Nice to have this beautiful male sitting with his head up, at least for us. Very nice cool breeze. It's still very, very warm and muggy at the moment, but there is a bit of a breeze blowing at the moment, which does help us a lot. Helps the lion, definitely. Again, panting with his mouth open, trying to cool himself down. Alright, I'm going to spend a little bit more time with this male, just see if he does decide to move for us. I don't think so, because it is very warm, but we'll see. And while I sit here, let's head back to Jamie, who's got a rather large tree trunk. Sitting with this beautiful Birmingham male. He's moved about a meter, and he's just moved into some shade, a little bit more shade, but that's it. But his head is still up. And I'm just wondering, it's so difficult to say if he's going to move or not. You never know. And there is still this cool breeze blowing at the moment, so the temperature has dropped slightly. Oh, there's a big sneeze. Do you see that? Okay, a little yawn. We know usually yawning is a good sign because they'll start, there we go, trying to get oxygen, and he may get up and move. Exactly what he's just done. Oh, wonderful timing. Isn't that great? So he's limping a little bit. Now, don't worry, everyone. This happens fairly often with lions after they've been lying down for a while, especially males. I've seen it quite a few times before. They'll get up and they'll start limping. The reason for that is they're probably just quite stiff from lying down for so long, and I'm sure as he starts warming up, that limp may just actually go away. Oh, that's wonderful. That is great. Our patience has paid off. I wonder if there is any water around, because I'm sure... What is he going to do now? Oh. All right. He just wanted to move out into the open. Well, at least we got to see him move. But I do think maybe it's those flies that were bothering him a little bit too much in the end, and he's trying to roll in the sand a bit. But you can see, I think they're still around him. That's why the tail's flicking. This is a beautiful area that it is in at the moment. And I think photographically, I think we would have got some lovely pictures of him walking there just into that, or towards the golden light. And we'll show you the sunset shortly. It's almost setting. Oh, there we go. It's on. So I was watching the lion. But you can see that beautiful sunset. Look at that. And especially if you're a photographer, this male lion walking into the sun would have given you beautiful golden light. This is a great time of the day. Great time of day to have a look at, or to photograph wildlife, especially big cats, because generally they do have this yellow or golden yellow coloration, leopards and lions. So with photography, you really don't have to change much of the photograph. You can just make sure your settings are correct, and you should be able to get a wonderful photograph of whatever big cat it is you're trying to take a picture of. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to move around a little bit, because if he is facing the other way, I think we're just going to have better light and a better view from the other side. So let me just drive around quickly. Surely you want to know if the lion's diets will change from buffalo now with all these baby impala around. Now, surely, to be honest, lions will definitely catch a baby impala if they find it. But the thing we need to realize is that it's not a substantial meal for lion. That's literally a small little snack. So, and I'm just going to park like this. How's that? So, lovely view of that lion and that beautiful light on it at the moment. So, Shirley, I think, generally speaking, because there's not a lot of meat on an impala lamb, and it's probably quite a lot of effort to catch a small lamb for the amount of food that they get. Generally, lions would prefer larger prey. Let's put it that way. Leopards, however, leopards will definitely be benefiting from the impala lambing season at the moment. It's a great size kill for a leopard. It's a perfect meal for a single animal. Don't have to share with anyone. And easier to hoist into a tree to keep out of reach of other predators. So leopards do hunt a lot of impala lambs this time of year. And I remember in the past, areas that having worked in these areas before, this time of year would be tricky to find leopards, because what happens is they end up catching young impala lambs, and then what they do is they take them into thickets and they hide them in a little thicket, and they feed on the ground, and you don't see them for a day or so. It becomes a little bit more difficult to find them. I just want to actually try move, this aerial out the way. The lion's changing positions, we changing positions. It's keeping us guessing. There we go. But he's definitely being bothered by those biting flies. I mean, his tail is flicking furiously at the moment, or fairly furiously, trying to keep the flies off of him. Look at that, and you can actually hear it. Let's see if we can hear it. Hear that tail every now and then, that little shame. It's not happy at all. I wouldn't be either. I'd definitely be very irritated by those flies. The tail's very, very thick and powerful, and a lot of muscle in the tail. You can hear every time it hits the ground. It hits it with quite a thud. So, Chai Connie, you'd like to know if I think maybe this male has pulled a muscle, perhaps, and I don't think so. Like I said, I've seen it many times with male lions. They might get a bit injured in a fight with one another, or when they're hunting, and sometimes hurt their paw, or something could happen. I don't think he's pulled a muscle as such, but when they do lie down for long periods of time, they'll lie down for most of the day. It might be an old injury or just a strain and a bit stiff, but once they get up and they get moving, generally it works itself out, and they'll start moving around fairly easily again. But it's hard to from yesterday. I'm just trying to think. I actually don't know where this lion was yesterday. Yeah, so we don't know. We actually didn't see them yesterday, I don't think. So yeah, I'm not too sure, Mary. I think, to be honest, I think it may or may not have been possibly about 3 or 4 kilometers, I think. But I'm not too sure. I don't know his exact last position from where we are now. Michael, and you're a new viewer. Welcome to Safari Live. Great to have you, and thank you for sending your question. And you wanted to know if I've ever seen a pride's takeover before. So, Michael, I haven't. I've seen prides kind of fighting because they've bumped into each other in one another's territory. I have seen that once or twice, and that can be very, very violent. Now, in the area I used to work in, just south of here in Londolozi, we had a coalition of 4 males, which were known as the Majinga Line, and they patrolled that area for many years, since 2010 to about 2000 and I think the beginning of this year, end of 2015, beginning of 2016. And they passed their prime now, and they've been pushed out. But before that, there was another coalition of 5 brothers, in fact, that used to patrol that whole southern and central part of the Sabi Sands. Those males, eventually what happened was, as they got older, they split up, which I think is kind of what's happened with these Birmingham males. We tend to see the 2 males fairly regularly. This male, Tinyo, and the other male, whose name I can't remember now, Mfumo, I think, and Fumo, and these 2 males have kind of been moving around in this territory for quite some time. The brothers, I think, have been a little bit further east, and that happens at times. So what happened in 2010, those coalition of 5, they split up slightly, and we had 2 big males dominant on Londolozi that stayed in that area for quite some time. And what had happened was they heard a coalition of males calling in the north one evening. And they came and investigated, and they bumped into one of the males. And this was also a coalition of 5 originally, and they bumped into one of the males, and these 2 males from the Mapoko killed this male from the Majingalan. We unfortunately didn't get to see it, but it's very interesting how the takeover occurred, because what happened was they killed this male, and then all that that noise and that commotion alerted the 4 brothers that were still up in this area in the northern section, and they headed south, and they caught one of the Mapoko males, killed him, and the other one ended up fleeing to the west, and he met up with these brothers, and they basically stayed there until they eventually died. Now those 4 males then slowly but surely ventured further and further south, taking over the territory that used to belong to the Mapoko, and those Majingalan became very, very successful in that area for many years, for about 5 years. So it was an incredible takeover, very violent takeover. 2 males were killed in the process, but those 4 males then came in, took over the territory, and new genes were introduced into the area, which is very, very important, and which is what happens. Usually these takeovers occur in the evenings. You might be lucky and you might find lions fighting during the morning if they've bumped into one another, and often what happens is you hear them calling and roaring, and usually that roaring is enough to chase the one pride away from the other one. So that is usually what happens. But I unfortunately haven't seen an actual takeover from a coalition. We've seen the aftermath the next day, but never seen the actual fighting and the aggression that is shown. I have seen males fight with females before, which can happen. But it all depends. It all depends on the area. It depends on the territory. Ilana, a 13-year-old viewer, good afternoon or good evening, Ilana. It's almost evening here. You want to know how old or how long does it take for a male lion to fully grow that mane? And Ilana, it's usually on average between 5 and 7 years for a mane to grow out fully. And I think these males, are around 9 or 10 years old, if I'm not mistaken. So they're still in the prime, between 8 and 10, if I'm not mistaken. So they're still kind of in their prime. I think that's why we don't have any other males challenging them just yet. Maybe later. Oh, beautiful paws. That tail still flicking around. All right. We might sit here a few more minutes. I know some other people are interested in trying to see this lion. I don't think he's going to move anytime soon. Still very comfortable lying out in the open, so I may just leave him fairly shortly. But nice to see him get up and move, though. And while I do that, let's head over to Brent and get an update from him. I think he's got some baby impala.